In this video, I'm going to show you how to record and edit a motovlog, so stay tuned. So I'm going to show you how I have everything set up on the bike and my helmet, so that way I can get the videos recorded, and then I'm going to show you how I actually edit it and put it all together as well. So I actually use two different GoPro cameras to record the footage. I have a helmet cam right here, which is the GoPro 11, which I have mounted to the chin mounts, and I'll show you that here in a minute. And then I also have a GoPro 10 mounted to the handlebars, and I decided to go with two different cameras just to kind of break up what the audience is seeing, and then that way they're not just staring at the road the whole time. They can actually see me and I can kind of talk to the audience, and then that also helps kind of hide some jump cuts that I'll show you in the editing process as well. All right, so I'm going to show you how I have my helmet set up for the GoPro. I do have the chin mounts, helmet mount right here. I did a separate video on this, but this thing has held up great. A lot of people complain that it is 3D printed, but I haven't had any issues with it, and you can see the 3M tape holds it in well. Have never had any issues with that coming loose. And inside the helmet, I have my lavalier mic. So I have it set on one side, and then I have the cord where it actually plugs into the media mod coming out the other side. And when I'm not using it, I kind of just tuck it in. And then all the extra cables I have hidden up behind the cheek pads and everything. So when I want to mount the GoPro to the helmet, I do have the media mod, which I use. There's a couple different ways that you can actually attach and get audio from the GoPro. I prefer to use the media mod just because it's less things to have mounted to the helmet. GoPro makes a mount where you don't even need the media mod. You just have a separate adapter, but the problem with that is that's another thing that you have to mount with the helmet, but it works for people. I just prefer less things mounted in my helmet, so that's why I went with the media mod. Chin Mounts does sell different GoPro accessories. I use their low profile one because that works best to where everything is not in the way. So I just set it on in here. And then I just tighten it down. And then on the back of the media mod is actually a port where you can plug in the mic. So I just go ahead and plug it in there and make sure it snaps into place, because I have had times where I've been recording and I haven't gotten it in there all the way, and then I have no audio. So that is actually what it looks like. I have a GoPro hooked up to the handlebars right here. This is just a generic handlebar mount I got off Amazon. Works great. It's got these foam pads right here so it doesn't scratch your handlebar. Another way you can mount it to your handlebars is using this Super Claw Jamp from GoPro itself. This will actually clamp anywhere you want to. I have the bag in the way, so that's why I don't use this. So once I get all the cameras set up and turned on, I do just use the general easy GoPro settings, so I don't dial in anything. I just use the general settings on both of them. I do record in 4K and then about 30 frames per second. And depending on what I'm actually filming, I will change the angle width. So on the helmet cam, I generally have it to the super view, so you get a little bit more of what I'm seeing in my surroundings. On the handlebar cam, I kind of bring it in a little bit, so I step it down to just the wide view. So once the cameras are actually turned on and recording, the first thing I do is clap my hands. And what that's going to do is help me sync the audio and video in post editing. And when you do that, I'll show you, it'll have two jumps of the audio, and you'll actually be able to line those up manually, or your editing software and Final Cut Pro can actually do it yourself. But if it's off a little bit, or you're in some other editor that doesn't do it automatically, you can actually sync the audio and video together that way by seeing those two spikes. And one thing I've learned after many mistakes is to do a test of your audio. So I'll actually record a short clip just of me testing the audio in the helmet, and then I'll turn it off and listen to it through the GoPro app. Make sure that the angle's where I want it, but then that's just to make sure that the audio is coming through. So once all that's done, ready to record, just hop on the bike. Now, the biggest trouble you're going to have getting used to or dialed in is your audio, because it is very difficult to get good sounding audio when you are motovlogging, because you're out in elements. The wind noise, your bike noise is loud, and then you're dealing with just recording in a helmet. I've gone through several different lavalier mics, and I've settled on the Deity. They actually don't make it anymore, but I've tried the Purple Panda and it sounded really good, but it only worked for like 2 videos and then it just stopped working. And then I've tried like the Xbox one, but that didn't work either. So you just may have to play around until you get the good right sounding mic for you, depending on your voice and your setup. I do recommend putting the Dead Cat on the lavalier mic. That way it kind of helps reduce some plosives coming out of your voice, since the microphone is pretty close to your mouth. And then it'll also kind of help reduce some of that wind noise as well. And then you typically want to talk with your visor closed, just because it's blocking out a lot of the wind noise, the noise coming from your motorcycle. You can open it, but it's going to obviously have a different sound. It's going to take a lot of the bass away from your voice too, from what I've noticed. So I definitely think having the visor closed, you get the best sound, but doesn't mean you can't open your visor, especially on hot days like this. There are ways to reduce some of the background noise and stuff in post that I'll show you, but if you got a super loud bike or no windscreen and it's a windy day, it is really difficult to get some good sounding audio out of that, but it is possible with a couple tricks I'll show you. One other thing that I use that I forgot to mention that helps out a lot is this tripod mount, because doing videos by yourself can get difficult, especially if you want to get yourself in the shot. So this thing actually folds up pretty nice, but then the legs come out like this and you just screw it down, and then you could set it on the ground. And this one in particular goes up to 72 inches, and this comes with a phone mount or a GoPro mount, and it also comes with a remote that if you set it up with the Bluetooth on your camera, you can actually take pictures when you're standing away from this. So I use this setup if I'm trying to get a thumbnail shot of me and the bike in the picture and I'm the only one around. So I'll just set it up, put the camera on there, have that little remote, and take the picture. And then you can also use it as a selfie stick once it's all folded up. So you can mount your camera to here and then just use this as a selfie stick. You also want to make sure that you use the GoPro Quick app, because you can actually control your cameras from that app as well. And then you also can keep an eye on your battery, because the battery life on GoPros are not good at all and they tend to overheat. So if it's a hot day and your bike's not moving and getting the wind on the cameras to help keep them cool, they do tend to overheat pretty quickly. So if you can't see the red flash on your camera, always like to open that app and make sure it is still recording every now and then, just to make sure it hasn't shut off, and then I don't find out until I get back. And one last tip, especially for safety to keep in mind, is if you're doing a motovlog around your area that you live, maybe take a route that you know and are familiar with, because that way you do have to, when you're doing a motovlog, obviously still ride a motorcycle and be vigilant of your surroundings, watch for any obstructions in the road, stuff like that, and other cars. But I like going on routes that I know and I ride all the time, so that way I can focus on the video and I know kind of what's coming up on the road. I know where the turns are. I know if there's any imperfections in the road, when that should be. So it just helps for safety to do it somewhere where you're familiar with. Once you have finished recording, it is time to put everything together in editing. I'm going to be using Final Cut Pro, but no matter what your editing software is, it's going to be kind of the same process, might look a little bit different. This isn't going to be a full tutorial on how to do everything, but some quick, easy tips and tricks to get you started. Now, I've gone ahead and uploaded all of my footage right here. I do have a little bit of footage I'm going to add in from my phone camera that I did, but I do have the two GoPros, so you'll see these two are from the handlebar cam, and then this one's from the helmet. So there's two different ways to put these together. So I'm going to do the manual way first. So we'll just drag the GoPro footage down here, and then we'll put it in the 4K. And then we're going to take the GoPro 10 footage and drop it directly on top of that. Now, when you have to manually sync these two footages, this is where the clapping beforehand is going to help you line everything up. You see I hit record on each camera at a little bit different time, but the spikes in audio are right here. And down here, you can always bring the audio level up to increase those. So what you want to do is just line those up as best as you can. You can zoom in to get a closer look and make sure they are pretty close to lined up. So we're going to move this one just a hair over, right about there. And then you're going to listen back to your footage. And it's pretty much lined up. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of go down to where I start talking and just listen to it and make sure it sounds pretty close. In this video, I'm going to show you how I record and edit my... So as long as you don't have a huge echo, it's going to be close enough. Now, the other method to syncing the audio and video, which is much easier, that is available in Final Cut Pro, might be available in some other softwares as well. I'm going to go ahead and select all three from both cameras, and then I'm going to just right click and go to synchronize clips, and then I'm just going to name it main. And then you want to make sure that use audio for sync is selected, so that way it's going to use the audio to sync all of these. And then it'll take a few minutes, and then it will drop a separate clip up here, and then you're just going to take it down. And it looks like it's just one single clip, but if you double click into that, it will bring it to both your cameras and you'll see everything is lined up automatically. You can see those waveforms right here where we clapped. Final Cut Pro has synced those together. And then you basically just go through and make all your cuts. Anywhere you messed up or there's dead space, you just kind of take that out. And since my main microphone is on my helmet cam right here, which is down here, I'm just gonna go ahead and turn down the handlebar cam because I don't need that audio. And then I can also bring up the other audio for my main. And then I'm just gonna start scrolling through and making cuts to where there's things that I wanna keep. So I know like right here is when I start the intro of the video, and these areas here is where I mess up. I tend to mess up a lot. I'm gonna hit Command Shift B to go ahead and make a cut on both of those. I'm just gonna select that, delete it, and then I'm just going to do the same thing right here, and then just keep scrolling through your footage and get everything cut down. Now I've gone through all the footage and made my initial cuts. I go through initially and just cut it to where I know I'm talking and want to keep that part, and then I'll dial it in a few more times from there. But what I want to show you is how to hide some of these cuts using that second camera. Like I said, other than getting to see a part of my beautiful face, I do like having the second camera to kind of help hide some of the cuts. So I moved over here to some of the footage where I'm actually driving, and it makes a little more sense to change up the camera angles here. So I'm going to say keep this one right here where it's on me and I'm talking, but you'll see right here when I made the cut, it kind of changes scenery and the color changes as well because of where the sun is. So instead of just having that, which is fine if you only have one camera, but I'm going to go ahead and select that one and delete that. And so that way where that cut is, it just switches to another camera angle, and it kind of seems like that cut didn't actually happen. I may have just changed the angle. They tend to overheat. So if it's a hot day, so not too bad. And then at the next cut down here, it's going to switch back to the handlebar cam quickly. So if you can't see the, and seems to be a little more smooth and not like I'm doing so many jump cuts. So that's one trick you can do using a second camera. And as we discussed, audio is another issue. You're typically going to pick up a lot of noise from just a regular microphone. So I'm going to show you how to, at least in Final Cut Pro anyway, reduce some of the noise and bring your voice forward a little bit more. You'll see right here, I've had to dial it down a little bit, but even if I go up to 0, you're going to see some of those peaking coming on here. So just because of the sound of the bike and the wind and everything. So I'll select the clip, or I'll select them all if they're all the same kind of riding. I have separate parts where I'm not riding, so I don't want to apply it to every clip, but this is a quick, easy way to help reduce some of that. So I'm going to go up here to the sound option here, and you can have the system analyze it and do its thing. It always coming out horrible. So I don't even have it do the auto analysis. So I'll actually hit the voice isolation, and that's going to help reduce a lot of the things around you and bring out the voice more. And you'll see automatically that some of those peaks kind of went away. And you can adjust this as much as you want. Obviously, the higher you go, the more processed the sound's going to be. I typically like to keep it in the 20s, maybe 30s if I can. I really don't like to go above that unless like I'm on the highway and I just can't do anything about it. So I'll bring it down, and it brings it up a little bit to the peaking, but then that's when you can actually lower the volume right there. Where I know I'm kind of good volume wise, on the right hand side of my screen here is actually the audio meter. And so I'll try and keep my audio between -12 and 6. Anything below that's going to be pretty quiet. Anything above that, you're going to start getting too loud. So I kind of just play around with it until the cameras to help keep them cool. I'm in that sweet spot right there, like that was. Tend to overheat pretty quickly. And I do edit with headphones on because you're going to get the best sound. I know most people listen from their phones, and you're not going to hear a lot of the things that you hear in actual enclosed headphones, but that way you can actually really dial in what you're hearing and make it sound a little bit better. You can also play around with some of the loudness, noise removal, and hum removal options that they have here. I typically don't use those because I don't need them, or it kind of messes with the sound too much towards it does sound too processed. So I just go with the voice isolation and the decibel, and that seems to work well for me. So no, starting right here is where I actually start getting on the bike, and the rest of it is me riding the bike and talking. So I want all of these to be the same audio level. So I'm just going to select them all, and then I'm going to go ahead and just do what we just talked about. I'm going to hit the voice isolation and get that dialed in. But then this way, all these clips will line up at the exact same audio level, and I don't have to do them each individually. So this is what the final product generally looks like. You see this is like the main camera right here along the middle, and then the top here is the handlebar camera, and I've kind of made the cuts at the transitions I wanted to. If you don't have a secondary camera, you can also add in like some B-roll and place that above your main camera to kind of give that different transition. And then you could also add in like your subscribe buttons and everything like that with aftermarket plugins. So that's how I personally set up, record, and edit my motovlogs. There are obviously a ton of different ways to do it. So once you kind of play around with it, you'll kind of see what works for you. Maybe there's a different camera setup. I know GoPros have a lot of issues with kind of failing on people. So there's some different action cameras out there. You can set them up on your helmet and handlebar the same way. But this is just the equipment I use, how I do it, and put everything together. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. I'll post links to everything I use in the description box below if you're interested. And if you do it a different way or have any tips and tricks as well, put that down in the comment section. And then check out these other videos on the Lowrider ST or the Iron 883.